Rise to fame. David Janssen's ascent into stardom came during a golden era of television, a time when network primetime shows reigned supreme in American households. The 1960s was a decade of dynamic changes in the entertainment industry, with color television just gaining momentum and audiences craving innovative storytelling. Janssen's remarkable acting style and on-screen persona fit in perfectly with viewers' evolving tastes, contributing to the triumph of the Fugitive and establishing him as a leading man. But what was it about David Janssen's style and presence that hooked audiences so profoundly? On one level, it was the emotional intensity he brought to every performance. He had an unguarded, almost vulnerable quality that made his characters feel real and relatable, even in high-stakes plotlines involving wrongful accusations and desperate pursuits. At a time when many male leads were defined by a stiffer, more traditional masculinity, Janssen brought a nuanced approach, blending ruggedness with sensitivity. This balance set him apart and resonated with viewers, who saw in him both an everyman and a hero under immense pressure. This ability to connect with an audience at a personal level was one key reason The Fugitive soared. The 1960s saw the rise of the man-on-the-run narrative, a cinematic and television trope reflective of people's real-world anxieties amidst societal changes. From the civil rights movement to the tension surrounding the Vietnam War, viewers found escapism in shows where the protagonist was on the move, doggedly proving his innocence in an often unjust world. Dr. Richard Kimble, as played by Janssen, embodied that tension and the universal hope for justice. Beyond just The Fugitive, Janssen also demonstrated a flair for bringing complexity to other roles, even when they were smaller or overshadowed by bigger names. His steady command of the screen kept him consistently in demand throughout the 1960s. Directors and producers recognized that he could carry an entire show, an immensely valuable trait at a time when the television landscape was bursting with new series vying for audiences' attention. Moreover, the award recognition he received, particularly the Golden Globe, signaled that critics also stood behind his work. David Janssen's Golden Globe accolade confirmed to studios and fans alike that here was a performer with true depth, someone destined to remain a household name for years to come. Still, as we will see, the story of how he handled that fame and the tribulations that accompanied it is a multifaceted one. Personal struggles. Fame in Hollywood can be a double-edged sword. For David Janssen, the relentless pressure to keep delivering powerful performances often took a toll on his personal life. It's not uncommon for talented actors, especially those navigating peak stardom in 1960s and 1970s Hollywood, to grapple with substance use given the intense schedules, constant public attention, and industry culture that frequently involved alcohol-filled gatherings. Janssen's difficulty on set might stem from various factors: physical exhaustion, mental stress, or a perfectionist streak. Some co-stars and directors reportedly admired his professionalism, stating that his so-called difficult reputation was simply the byproduct of a man under tremendous strain to maintain his A-list status. Others, however, mentioned that his moods and personal habits sometimes affected his reliability. Regardless, few doubted his raw talent and the magnetism he displayed on screen. Furthermore, the fact that he continued to work steadily in film and television despite well-known personal challenges is a testament to both his professional reputation and the industry's need for an actor of his caliber. The cycle of a star's personal struggles impacting their career and vice versa has been a common theme in Hollywood for decades. Studios were often willing to accommodate the personal demons of certain actors because their on-screen value was significant and David Janssen was no exception. The collapse of his second marriage underscores how the tension between personal relationships and professional demands can be brutal for a Hollywood star. Even in the face of a publicized divorce, heavy smoking, and drinking, Janssen managed to keep his career afloat, marking a certain resilience that would remain evident until his final days. In many ways, this resilience mirrored the tenacity of the characters he portrayed, men often up against insurmountable odds. Fans, therefore, saw both the man and his characters in similarly challenging circumstances, adding a layer of authenticity to his public image. Childhood and family background. Early childhood often shapes an individual's personality and creative drive, and David Janssen's upbringing in Napanee offered him a distinctly Midwestern beginning, well before he discovered the bright lights of Hollywood. Napanee's population was, and remains, tiny, providing a tight-knit community atmosphere. Small-town living instills a degree of humility and groundedness, attributes that many who knew Janssen noted well into his adult life. His mother's involvement in show business was undoubtedly a significant influence on Janssen's career path. Hollywood in the 1930s and 1940s was just stepping into its golden age, brimming with glamorous stars, vast studio systems, and an evolving social scene that captivated the nation. By the time Bernice Graff decided to settle in Hollywood permanently in 1942, she exposed her son to a city that was the epicenter of global film production and celebrity culture. That environment likely fueled his performance ambitions, especially as he excelled in music, dance, and entertaining from an incredibly young age. It's interesting to note that Janssen's father, Harold Edward Meyer, was in a more traditional, stable profession, banking. The union of a banker father and a mother engaged in show business created a unique family dynamic. While one parent represented economic security and conservative roots, the other embodied the potential for creative exploration. Though that marriage eventually ended, the contrasting worlds of finance and Hollywood that shaped Janssen's earliest years may have broadened his perspective on life and success. Winning a Prettiest Baby contest at 6 months might seem like an anecdotal detail, but such an early taste of recognition might have helped foster a sense of stage presence and self-assuredness. Even the simplest contests can influence a child's sense of identity, encouraging them to pursue more moments in the spotlight. Learning instruments like the piano and the accordion, along with honing his singing and dancing abilities, showed that from a young age Janssen had a thirst for performance variety, a trait that would serve him well when he broke into acting. When Bernice remarried Eugene Janssen, David adopted the surname and embraced his stepfather's presence. While details about Eugene Janssen are less documented than those about David and Bernice, it's clear that moving to Los Angeles was pivotal for David's growth. He was suddenly in the hub of entertainment opportunities, forging a path that diverged from a typical small-town upbringing. As we'll see, he capitalized on those opportunities almost immediately by appearing in movies while still a teenager. Early performance, experiences. Imagine being 14 and already having 6 film appearances on your resume. That was the reality for David Janssen. While many teenagers juggled after-school activities like sports or student clubs, David was learning lines on movie sets and practicing comedic timing or dramatic delivery for the camera. Fairfax High School, located in Los Angeles, had, and still has, a reputation for fostering artistic and musical talent. So, Janssen was not entirely out of place among peers who might also have been child actors or aspiring performers. This environment likely supported his budding career ambitions. The Straw Hat Circuit in Ogunquit and Kennebunkport was famous for offering summer stock theater, where actors, both seasoned and amateur, performed plays for lively summer audiences. Engaging with live theater at a young age would have honed Janssen's ability to project his voice, read audiences, and manage stage fright. It's a different discipline from film acting because in theater, you can't rely on multiple retakes. Each performance is immediate and depends on real-time audience engagement. This experience might have given Janssen a strong, versatile foundation. Rehearsing for Broadway plays that never saw the stage could have been disheartening. Theater productions can collapse for all sorts of reasons: funding issues, casting changes, creative disputes, and such setbacks often discourage even veteran performers. However, David chose to return to Hollywood to focus on film, reflecting either his personal preference for screen acting or a pragmatic understanding of where his strengths lay. In classic Hollywood, landing a contract with a major studio like Universal International was a monumental step for any aspiring actor, effectively guaranteeing a series of roles and the opportunity to build a public persona. With Yankee Buccaneer, 1952, Janssen took another step toward establishing himself as a reliable on-screen presence. The studio system often locked talent into multi-year contracts, which could be both an advantage and a disadvantage. Nonetheless, at just 20 years old, Janssen was officially on the path to cinematic recognition, an invaluable position, especially in an industry notorious for cutthroat competition. Army service. However, his career was put on hold when David entered the Army the following year. He served in special services at Fort Ord, California, but his passion for entertainment never waned. In May 1953, the Santa Cruz Sentinel reported on the Hellzapoppin' GI Talent Show, which featured Private First Class David Janssen as the master of ceremonies. Under contract with a major studio, he entertained audiences with humorous observations on Army life. Early television appearances. In the 1950s, television was a rapidly expanding medium. Shows like Boston Blackie, Sheriff of Cochise, and The Millionaire were part of a burgeoning landscape that offered storytelling distinct from Hollywood's big screen offerings. Guest starring roles were pivotal in allowing emerging actors to demonstrate their range without the burden of carrying an entire series. For David Janssen, each television appearance represented a new opportunity to refine his acting craft and gather more fans. Anthology series like Dick Powell's Zane Grey Theater were especially influential in mid-century television as they presented standalone stories each week. An actor appearing multiple times in the same anthology show meant producers trusted his capabilities to inhabit different characters and scenarios successfully. Janssen's repeated collaborations with Dick Powell's production team affirmed that his on-camera presence was both captivating and dependable. These early television forays also provided him with a breadth of genres, from detective stories to westerns and even comedic sketches. By diversifying his repertoire, Janssen not only showcased his versatility to casting directors, but also tested his own preferences and strengths. The 1950s was a transitional period in which TV was vying with film for audiences, and talented crossover actors like Janssen stood to benefit immensely. This rapid-fire exposure to different genres and character types laid a robust foundation for his future success in major TV series. Richard Diamond, Private Detective. In 1957, David landed the lead role in the television series Richard Diamond, Private Detective, based on the radio drama of the same name. He played the character of Richard Diamond, a former New York Police Department cop who had become a private detective operating in a film noir-like world. In each episode, he was either hired for a case at a rate of $100 a day plus expenses, or was requested to help out by a desperate friend. David Janssen's stint as Richard Diamond private detective eventually came to an end, prompting him to focus once again on his movie career. By March of 1961, the media took note of his busy schedule. 10 episodes of a television show filmed each month, work in summer stock, his own television pilot, and 6 completed films in which he appeared in nearly every scene, all in the past year. The Fugitive. When The Fugitive premiered, it tapped into a cultural fascination with the underdog narrative and the idea of an innocent man relentlessly pursued by both the law and fate. Roy Huggins, known for developing other successful series like Maverick and 77 Sunset Strip, excelled at constructing compelling protagonists embroiled in morally ambiguous situations. With Quinn Martin producing, The Fugitive came under the care of one of television's most prolific production houses, renowned for hits such as The Untouchables, The FBI, and later Barnaby Jones. From the get-go, Janssen's portrayal of Dr. Richard Kimble cemented the show's credibility. Not only did he have a proven track record in dramatic roles, but he also exuded the vulnerability needed to capture a man torn apart by grief and injustice. Each episode followed Kimble to a new location where he took on odd jobs, encountered people from various walks of life, and often found himself in situations requiring him to risk his anonymity to help others. This episodic structure, featuring a rotating cast of guest stars, allowed viewers to see Kimble's compassion and moral code despite his own desperate circumstances. Interestingly, The Fugitive wasn't always a top ratings hit during its first run. Some critics attributed this to the show's rather somber tone, a stark contrast to the comedic or light-hearted family fare popular at the time, such as The Beverly Hillbillies and Bewitched. Nevertheless, it built a dedicated audience who tuned in weekly, eager to see if this would be the episode where Dr. Kimble catches a break or uncovers a clue to the elusive one-armed man. The quest to find that one-armed man was central to the show's tension. The stakes continued to build as audiences yearned for Dr. Kimble's name to be cleared. In a bold move that set a precedent for future series, with serialized story arcs, David Janssen pushed hard for a definitive conclusion. The network feared a ratings drop-off after revealing the resolution, but Janssen believed the viewer's emotional investment merited closure. In August 1967, The Fugitive ended in a 2-part finale, an unprecedented move for that era. That final episode, entitled The Judgment, broke viewership records at the time, illustrating the deep resonance the series had achieved with its fans. Dr. Richard Kimble's saga also created a blueprint for future shows that ran with the man on the run concept. Series like Run for Your Life, or even later reimaginings of the theme Owe a Debt to the Fugitive. Decades later, the 1993 film adaptation starring Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones introduced the storyline to a new generation, winning critical and commercial success. The ethos of the original series, however, remains tied to David Janssen's quiet gravitas and purposeful intensity. By the time The Fugitive concluded, Janssen had broadened the scope of what a television drama could accomplish, paving the way for more serialized storytelling and meaningful character arcs. Post-Fugitive, career, and TV movies. After the immense success of The Fugitive, David Janssen sought to avoid typecasting. He didn't want to be perpetually associated with just one iconic character, despite how beloved Dr. Richard Kimble was. Branching out into feature films and TV movies offered him a chance to explore different genres, roles, and creative teams. Some of these films were major studio projects, while others were smaller productions, allowing him to experiment with character nuances he hadn't previously explored. One of his post-Fugitive highlights includes The Shoes of the Fisherman, 1968, starring Anthony Quinn. This film, set against the backdrop of Cold War tensions and Vatican politics, presented a lofty storyline about a newly elected pope trying to avert a global crisis. Though Janssen's role wasn't the lead, the film's high profile and political overtones stood in stark contrast to the stark criminal pursuit narrative of The Fugitive, showcasing his willingness to tackle challenging or complex material. Janssen also gravitated toward television films, which were gaining popularity as networks recognized the potential of made-for-TV movies. These productions often tackle contemporary social issues or psychological thrillers well suited to an actor of Janssen's dramatic caliber. Night Chase, 1970, for example, cast him in a tense storyline that tapped into the era's fascination with crime and pursuit. City and Fear, 1980, delved into media sensationalism, urban paranoia, and the public's obsession with serial killers, topics that remain relevant. Janssen's involvement in such projects demonstrated an interest in stories that pushed beyond the boundaries of conventional network TV fare. Moreover, his two 90-minute Harry O films effectively served as pilots for the later series, showing once again that episodic television retained a strong pull for him. He thrived in longer character-driven arcs and found the detective genre particularly engaging, possibly hearkening back to his earlier roles in Richard Diamond Private Detective. Even though Janssen achieved success on film sets, the lure of a structured, episodic environment where a character's development unfolds week by week remained powerful. His narration in Centennial, the sprawling miniseries based on James Missioner's novel, added another layer to his television repertoire. Miniseries were popular in the late 1970s, combining the serial appeal of weekly shows with the scope of feature-length storytelling. By participating in Centennial, Janssen stayed relevant in a medium that was constantly evolving. This project also linked him with a star-studded cast and high production values, reaffirming that his talent remained in high demand. O'Hara, U.S. Treasury, and Harry O. In 1971, he starred in a new television series called O'Hara, U.S. Treasury, created by Jack Webb of Dragnet fame. In the show, David played the role of Nebraska County Sheriff Jim O'Hara, who joins the United States Department of the Treasury after his wife and child die in a fire. After O'Hara, U.S. Treasury ended, David starred in his final television series, Harry O., 1974 to 1976, which followed the story of private detective Harry Orwell, a former cop suffering from back trauma after being shot while on duty. Initially only fair in the ratings, the show's viewership rose dramatically after it was retooled. However, incoming network president Fred Silverman canceled Harry O. and replaced it with Charlie's Angels. David was furious, believing Harry O. was his best character ever, and he swore it would be his last television series. Ironically, Farrah Fawcett, one of the future stars of Charlie's Angels, had appeared on Harry O. as Harry's girlfriend, Sue Ingram. Personal life and marriages, marital instability, and the trials of show business often go hand in hand. The first marriage to Ellie Graham in 1958 began as Janssen's career was gathering steam. Las Vegas weddings were known for their spontaneity and glitz, but they also symbolize how quickly relationships can move in Hollywood's high-octane environment. 10 years is a considerable duration, yet living under the spotlight likely intensified any cracks in their relationship. By 1968, the stress from professional obligations, coupled with personal disagreements, culminated in a divorce that drew the public eye. His second marriage to Danny Crane Greco in 1975 came at a time when Janssen was already a well-established star, though not without personal demons. Danny, known for her own modeling and acting pursuits, would have understood the demands of the industry. Despite the challenges that come with any marriage involving a celebrity, particularly one dealing with addictions, they stayed together until Janssen's passing. The specter of heavy smoking, 4 packs a day, is mind-boggling by today's standards. In mid-20th century Hollywood, smoking was often seen as a norm, and commercials or film scenes glorified the habit. However, even by the 1970s, medical evidence about the dangers of smoking was mounting. Excessive alcohol use further aggravated health risks. Many fans found it tragic that an actor so beloved for his intense and emotive portrayals would be at the mercy of such debilitating habits. Still, it's telling that these struggles, while damaging to his health, did not overshadow his professional life entirely. Janssen remained in high demand, continuing to work until his final years. This balancing act, personal turmoil coexisting with professional success, is part of the bittersweet legacy that would define David Janssen's story. Death. David Janssen's untimely passing at 48 marked a somber end to a life filled with notable accomplishments and unrelenting struggles. On that day in Malibu, a heart attack abruptly curtailed a career that still had potential for further evolution, especially in an era when television was about to explode with new formats and thematic boldness in the 1980s. The notion that he may have taken on new and challenging projects had he lived longer remains a poignant what-if for fans and television historians alike. His death also brought into stark relief the toll taken by years of heavy smoking, drinking, and a grueling work schedule. Hollywood has always been a demanding realm, but the willingness of studios to accommodate hectic and often unhealthy lifestyles for the sake of output was a harsh reality. Janssen's mortality reminded peers and admirers that even the most stalwart performers could succumb to the very pressures that made them so compelling on screen. Nevertheless, the warmth with which fans and colleagues remembered him underscores the mark he left on popular culture. His funeral was attended by significant figures in film and TV, many of whom praised not only his on-screen prowess but also his generosity and wit in personal interactions. Tributes in newspapers and television segments noted the deep influence his roles had on the detective genre, as well as the standard he set for dramatic television storytelling. Legendary actor may sound like a cliché, but for David Janssen, it's apt. He embodied an archetype, a flawed, determined man battling forces greater than himself, and he did so with gravitas and vulnerability. The characters he portrayed, especially Dr. Richard Kimble and Harry Orwell, remain iconic for their realism and emotional resonance. Even though his life ended too soon, his work continues to speak to the universality of struggle, hope, and perseverance.